the CIO making $210,000 a year. We're going to move you to DC. And by the way, that's really absurd. Knowing what my salary is, knowing what yours is, and quite frankly, most of them are nonprofits, so that's most of them are a matter of public record. You could just go out there and collect the salaries and realize that given the magnitude of this job, given the complexity of this job, and the project that you're looking at here, they're going to have to use contractors significantly to do this, because the talent is not going to leave where they're at to do this project, even though we all agree that the group that you're serving here is so important, and that all of us sort of feel compelled to help and we want to help. But that kind of money in a DC market or even an Austin market is just not enough to take on that kind of scrutiny and that kind of thing. So, all right, for whatever reason, you're at retirement and you're saying, hey, I'll take on the role for 210. Here we go. So let's start with the timeline. So you're going to do a pilot. You're going to do the Washington market, which I think is selected for a reason. It's probably their most advanced or their most cohesive. So you have a group of ready hospitals that maybe have some good workflows. They're ready for an implementation. They may even have an Epic implementation, a Cerner implementation already in place at one of their hospitals. So they're ready to go. That's the pilot. 2020. Now, you just did a pretty aggressive timeline. Is 2020 enough time? It's the middle of 2018 to do this pilot for, let's say, I don't know, 10 hospitals in the greater Northwest area?
Bill, I think they're going to do 3 hospitals up in the Washington State area. But
okay.
Still, they have to gain consensus on that clinical build across the VA system. And it's really that build of order sets and workflows that will support the rest of the deployment across the country. So they have to gain that consensus. And that is what is time consuming. Gaining that consensus on clinical build, and then proving it out in pilot sites and preparing that build for scalability and distribution, right? Yeah,
and that's where I was going to take you. So you don't want to do regional builds. You really, especially on that clinical workflow and the ontology and the terminology and data sharing, all those models need to be baked for the entire system. I mean, you don't start with, hey, this is what we're going to build in the Northwest, and we'll figure out what we're going to do in the Northeast. You really do have to drive that consensus across the board. I just know in our process, that consensus took, and now, all right, so before I go there, the one thing to point out is there is no billing within the VA. So that was a significant challenge in building out the EHR, because you just have so many financial and different billing mechanisms. The VA doesn't have that, so that makes it a little easier. But still, that clinical consensus is hard to drive. Are they going to be able to do that consensus build by 2020? I would. My gut tells me that's going to take a year in and of itself to drive that clinical consensus.
Absolutely, and then it's going to take longer than a year to do that build once you gain that consensus. So if they can do the consensus on maybe 200 or 300 order sets and workflows, then how fast can they configure Cerner and build it? And again, looking at that patient population, it's an aged population. They're going to need home monitoring. They're going to need care management.
Yep.
And home monitoring, care management needs to be integrated. So they have a tremendous build to do, and doing that in 2 years looks very, very tight for those pilot sites in Washington State for me.